you believe that we started recording right in the middle of 2020 with all of the COVID and lockdowns going on around us, unable to meet up? So like many a young gentleman, we turned to the internet for our entertainment. Tried to find a place where we could meet up and talk about the good, the bad, and that time that Stu saw a pelican on the canal. In order to facilitate our dreams of answering all of the big questions in film, and after a few attempts at recording via other methods to various levels of success, we found Zencastr, a super easy web-based one-stop shop for recording. Log in and you're ready to record in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a tech genius to get high quality audio or video. And on top of that, the one time we have had an issue, the fact that the multi-layered backups are stored locally means it's easily fixed all in browser. There are plenty of tools you need when you start podcasting, so let Zencastr take that headache away as it offers a place to record, edit and distribute all from one website. Any lazy bones Jones can pick up and play and have studio quality audio or 4K video put out for the world to see when using Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code CAGEFIGHTING and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And now, hit the music.
Nicolas Cage is probably one of our generation's definitive actors.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's the first one of the brand new year. Jermaine, man, Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone had an excellent Christmas and New Year's.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here. It's 2024 and boy do I feel it. I am struggling so far in this igloo that is my garage. Somebody please sponsor us to be able to afford a studio.
A studio would be wasted on us. Hello everyone. Is this the first one I've done as a 40-year-old, Andy? I can't remember.
When did you turn 40?
December 8th.
8th.
Had we done one
Ordered after the 8th, for sure we did.
I think we did, didn't we? Because I was ill the week, 2 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah,
and we recorded that week after. So, no, this isn't your first as a 40-year-old.
I think it just feels different now. Christmas is all gone, and now I can settle into actually realising this terrible affliction. That it actually, for the first time, it actually does feel different. I can't explain it. It's like you shouldn't be doing certain things, but not that it's going to stop me. But
we'll get to like Barbie talk as the podcast goes on and stuff. But the irrepressible thoughts of death certainly did start to creep in post 40th birthday.
And my knee went on Friday as well. I thought I'm turning to Andy.
Oh, mine's been gone since I was about 12 years old, so that's nothing that bad. It's not age-related, that one, I don't think. So we're here to discuss our top fives of 2023. So any film released between 1st of January and the 31st of December last year. It'll be 5 to 2, honourable mentions, and then we'll give our number ones. But before we get into that, I do have a story to tell you, gentlemen.
Oh, please do.
So, you know how you hopefully lovingly refer to me as André Gillard. I think that means that it's generally films that are a little bit avant-garde and a little bit experimental, that I tend to embrace that kind of a film. So for the top fives, I wanted to make sure I'd seen all the films that I wanted to see for last year so I could get a true picture. So I watched a film called How to Have Sex, which is a coming-of-age drama about consent and, rites of passages and stuff like that. I'd heard it was quite a hard-hitting drama. I thought, okay, cracking, we'll watch that. And I watched it, and it starts, and then after 10 minutes or so, it goes back to the start, and then it goes through again. And then after about another 10 minutes, it goes back to the start. And I thought, I'm noticing, have I fucked up with this? Or am I noticing little bits they're adding in, and this story's going to expand and expand? And then it turns out, an hour and 40 minutes later, when the film ends, I'd literally just watched the beginning 5 minutes of the film, the end 5 minutes of the film, and they just kept repeating it on this film. And I then watched the actual proper version after that. It's a fucking tremendous film, don't get me wrong. But I thought most people would have seen that repeat and would have just fucked it off immediately. But me being me, I was like, what is the director trying to say about consent? And
stood up, Sundance Film Festival, standing ovation inside your living room.
yeah, it was a little bit, but I was so confused at the end. I was like, she's supposed to have been raped, and all I've got is a shoulder shrug. Like that's not enough. So yeah, I then went and checked elsewhere and found the full version of the film and felt awful, like an absolute moron at the end of it.
I mean, to be fair, it was neither one of us coined the name Andre Gillard. That was little Dan on the Fancast.
Yes, that is true. But it just seemed to have stuck somewhat. But yeah, never mind. Right, okay, we'll move on. Top 5. My number 5 is a film which I've mentioned quite a few times last year called Rye Lane, which I absolutely fell in love with in the cinema. I adored that movie. It was such a sweet, funny little, effectively a road trip around London between this couple who had both recently experienced a desolation within their relationship and them rebuilding themselves together almost across the space of like a week maybe, but just really sweet, really beautiful. And I watched it again over Christmas with the other half, and it was still excellent, even though I'd watched it like, I think it was 10 months between the first watching and this most recent one, and it was still a perfect film. I think there's been nothing quite like it for quite some time, where it's sweet without being saccharine. I really love this movie. And I can't wait to see more from this cast. The main guy who's in it's recently started appearing in a murder mystery show on a Sunday night on BBC One. So it looks like the cast are starting to get their flavours a little bit now, and we'll be seeing more of them too. So my first one is Rye Lane, coming in at number 5. I really struggled to pick my number 5 because there were just so many choices. I think that was the first film I fell in love with last year, and that's why that's on my list.
I'm just going to screen grab them this year from IMDb, because last year when I took all notes and everything, and then obviously some I did watch and then I forgot that I'd watched them. But I thought, now if I do this, then they're there and I can't escape them and I'll remember. So that was
Disney Plus.
Disney, yeah. Because I put it on the watch list the other day when I was on there, and I thought, oh, that's someone you've been talking about all the time. Not normally my kind of thing, but if you're in the mood.
It was one of those unlimited screenings, so I thought, well, I've paid for an unlimited card. I'm going to make the most of it. And it was a great evening. Matt, number 5 for you, please.
Yeah, so this was a follow-on from 2021's How to Become a Tyrant, but it was Netflix's How to Become a Cult Leader, documentary series narrated by Peter Dinklage. 2023 was the year of the cult, because I obsessed over Far Cry 5, which is like the Americana cult family story, and I really enjoyed it. It sent me on this bit of a path about kind of reading into watching documentaries about cults and stuff like that. And this documentary series goes through, it's got a quite interesting like artistic style to it. It treats it as if it's a playbook. So it's teaching you how to be the cult leader, and each episode is a different part of the playbook and focuses on like an individual cult leader in this sense. So, you'd have loads of them really, or the different churches and all the different bits and bobs and Manson and everybody else. It's been followed on now by a mob boss one as well, exactly the same kind of format. Peter Dinklage is in it as well, but it's just easily digestible, but about a topic that is really interesting and into like the human psyche and how people can get strung along into these cults. So if you're into kind of mini-series, documentaries about kind of the quirks of those kind of things, it's definitely worth a watch. Nothing too heavy. It's taken all in a bit of like a fun tone for something that's obviously not a fun topic.
And did you say it was Netflix?
Netflix that on. So you've got How to Become a Tyrant, I think was the first one. So that was all like Hitler, Robert Mugabe and everybody else.
Yeah.
And then there's this, and now there's a mob boss one now as well, to how to become a mob boss. They're all just like easily digestible episodes, but they are quite fun. They get the experts in to talk about the different people and stuff like that. So as far as the docuseries go, they're pretty good.
Did you watch Waco, American Apocalypse?
No, I don't think I did.
Because that was on my shortlist. I never even put it on because I completely forgot about it. That's, you know, the lunatic in Far Cry 5,
Mhm.
the cult leader. It's kind of loosely based on him, on the real guy. Branch Davidian, they were called. It's called Waco, WACO. It's a limited series on Netflix as well. That came out last year. That was really good. So I heard the Waco siege had been in like passing and stuff, but I never really knew what it was about. And it's just mentalists.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story anyway, the whole Waco thing. So I'm going to add that to my list as well. I've heard the podcast by the last podcast on the left, and they did a series about the whole Waco and all that stuff. So that says like right up my street, to be fair. So I think I'll check that one out.
Yeah, it was really. I really enjoyed it, and it kind of led me down that, as these things do. We went to the Boston bombing one as well, which is on there, which is also really good. None of these are actually on my lists. There they are. But my number 5, the only TV show mentioned for me, and that was Silo. We've talked about it enough last year. It was completely came out of the blue. I mean, Apple TV Plus doing some amazing stuff there that no one talks about. It's niche of the niche. And then you have this thing that comes out with Rebecca Ferguson, who we know, and who does niche of the niche stuff anyway. And then you come out with something like this, which is kind of Fallout-like, about people living underground and why they're there, and do they actually go outside? When they go outside, do they live, or is it all a conspiracy? And it's just excellent, and it ended really well, and it got commissioned for the second season. So we all loved it anyway, didn't we? So it was a no-brainer. It was one of them TV events as well, because they left it every week rather than dump it all in one go, which worked really well for this, because it gave you old lost vibes of conspiracy times and what's actually going on, and you go on forums, and it was like being 20 years ago, yeah, for a brief period of time, which is always good. But yeah, Silo, my number 5.
That felt like the first thing that everybody was watching together. Like, there was a few other shows last year which people came to at different times and have all enjoyed, like Shrinking, which is another Apple TV thing. But Silo felt like that was the first one where pretty much, or at least us three, was watching it every week, almost coming to get the end at the same time, which was quite nice, because you are right, it doesn't feel like that event really happens any longer, does it? We don't watch TV as a community anymore.
I think the only reason it didn't trouble my 5 was because I thought the first 1 or 2 episodes were so strong, and the last couple of episodes were so strong, but they felt like a bit of a slight lull in the middle where I was committed to the point. And I think because of Sam being into it and you guys being into it, just kind of stuck with it. And I'm glad I did, because he had a really great ending to it. But I think it was just a little slow in the middle for me to trouble my top 5, to be fair.
Right, so my number 4 is, last year there were some really strong animated films out, and this was a tough one because I really wanted to represent an animated film. So it was such a toss-up between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem and Spider-Verse. And the only reason that Spider-Verse isn't getting onto my list is because it was very much part 1 of a 2-part, so they need to stick the landing for it to be, a brilliant, brilliant film. So my number 4 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which in fairness is equally as good. Like, I had such a riot of a time with that film. It was everything I wanted a Turtles film to be. As someone who, as the fellas can see, Michelangelo over my left shoulder currently, I've been obsessed with the Turtles for such a long time. I've always wanted to see a proper representation of what they mean to me, where it's fun and lively, and some of the live action films have struggled to really capture that. They've either been a bit too dark and leaned into the very old 1984 comics, or they've been too kiddified, whereas this felt like it sort of walked the line between the two. They had the moments of the family struggling for acceptance in the real world, so they had to run away and hide. But then we also had the colourful characters of all the villain/hero helpers in the end, and their acceptance and everything. And I had such a great time. I think I saw it 4 times at the cinema in the end. Like, I properly loved it. And there was nothing else on. So, like, I should go see the Turtles again then, because it's such a great film that as soon as it came out on streaming, again, I watched it because I just loved it. It felt like that's what the Turtles have always been to me. And it was great to finally see it on the big screen. So I adored that movie.
Yeah, it was quite obviously made by fans of the original show, and it looks incredible as well. It looks as good as Spider-Verse does. So I know exactly why you put them together like that. It was one of my honourable mentions. It just missed out. But again, like you, I love Turtles. Always have done. I will get the Technodrome one day. Well, we might see it in the second or third film. Who knows? I mean, this is obviously going to carry on now because of how well it was received. And the whole test of, will it work for people who don't know about Turtles? Well, worked for a 12-year-old son who knows nothing about them, and he loved it as well. So it passed that test too.
Mm-hmm. Matt, did you get to see it in the end?
No, I didn't.
Too young.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
He was never like, I saw the Shredder's Revenge or whatever it's called was on Game Pass, and and again, but like the only time I ever played those like side-scrolling 8-bit kind of games, shit thee not, was like, remember when in chip shops there used to be arcade machines? I'd only ever play them in them, really, and that like at memory unlocked. Like, you never see Bubble Blast in a chip shop anymore, but you used to always see it. I remember there being a chip shop at, in Chapel Ash that would have like an arcade machine in it. And yeah, I think I was just slightly too young for those, but it looked stunning. There'll be a Sunday afternoon where it comes on. I mean, me and Sam only watched We Bought a Zoo for the first time the other day on a Sunday afternoon. That was tremendous. So I'm sure it will have its time.
Super. Right, what's your number 4 then, Matt?
Well, everybody's favourite heartthrob, Beckham, the Netflix documentary Beckham. Now, I was always like appreciated David Beckham's skills and everything else, and there was no real surprises in the documentary itself, but I thought it was structured really well, and he really highlighted. I didn't realise at the time just how much he was hated after the 98 World Cup until I watched it. So I'd have been 10 going on 11 during it. So I wasn't buying the paper. I wasn't reading or watching the news or anything like that. We heard about it in, like, obviously we watched it. First time I cried at football. Well, actually, was the Wolves, when Wolves went out in the FA Cup to Arsenal, was that before then? Around
98. 97, 98, so it's the same summer?
Same kind of time, yeah. And I remember it, like, people were talking about it in school, but then that was that. And then to kind of watch how it took until that free kick against Greece for him to, like, get his redemption was really... I didn't realise it was quite that way. And I just think that it was really structured. Like, nothing was a shock. I remember all his transfers. I remember everything about it. But the human side of it as well, how he clearly shows he's got OCD or some kind of fixation in his psyche. It was just a really interesting documentary. I really enjoyed it. I had big beaming smiles on my face for the triumphant moments, and I really felt for the family and everything during the bad. He conveniently skips over the whole Rebecca Lewis thing pretty quickly. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, he skipped the queue to see the Queen's coffin or whatever it was. But yeah, that's one of those things. Never mind.
Yeah, I still haven't got around to watching it. It has been on my list to view. I'm such a big Beckham fan when he used to play, so yeah, it's finding time. But yeah, I will definitely try and fit it in at some point.
Like, I didn't realise quite how out in the cold he was at Madrid either. Well, like, but by that point it was kind of not really in my sphere of consciousness at the time, but then it was really interesting to see his kind of redemption story there. Then the stuff with Landon Donovan, at Galaxy and everything else. Just a really, really well put together, well structured documentary series.
It was like a proper nostalgia hit for me, the whole thing, because I mean, I remember that match of the day, that night when he scored against Sullivan. for Wimbledon. I remember that happening, and it was like
Yeah.
the whole world melted down as soon as you went into school on that Monday. 2 days later, it was just insane. And yeah, we were 14 for France '98. So all the fallout for that. I mean, that was when we were buying papers, and it was in like Shoot and Match, and Saturday Comes if you wanted to be intellectual at the time. But his whole career was like from when I started watching football properly in like '94 onwards. It was like a whole span of it all. So for me, it was like nostalgia hit, one after the other. Even when he went to Madrid, that was when I was watching Revista every week, and I was watching Spanish football like 3 games a week because it was on Sky and it was easy to access rather than going through Viaplay or whatever it is now. But yeah, like you said, it's really well put together. It's well worth a watch. Even like when we say about these things like Formula One, Drive to Survive, that people who hate Formula One watch it because it's a great, really well done series. You don't even have to like football, or you don't have to like David Beckham to watch this because it's just really well made.
Excellent. Because like we do criticise Netflix quite a bit, I find, because they're not very good at being concise. Netflix, if they've got a story to tell that's going to take an hour, they will take a day. That's generally the issue. But with this, the way you're talking about it, it sounds like they've made the documentary, covered everything, and that's what it should be. It's all killer, no filler, basically.
Yeah, it's not like that hotel thing.
Yeah,
where that was like an hour and a half docu-film when they spread it over 3 hours. That was ridiculous.
The Cecil Hotel one.
yeah. Because they've had a few of them, haven't they? And it's not just with the documentaries. I don't think. I think the films are just as guilty as going to the nth degree when they don't really need to. This one sounds like it's a lot more concise and to the point.
Yeah.
Super. It's you next, isn't it? Stu, number 4, please.
I mean, you talk about getting concise and to the point. I mean, if a film was ever off, it's this one. It's obviously Barbie had to feature in this list somewhere. Just glorious, silly nonsense that has no right being anywhere near as good as it is. And I'm still baffled even now that the reach that film has had, the success that it's had. I mean, we all went in with a bit of a joke, with the whole Barbenheimer thing, not really expecting anything for me personally, and then that masterpiece arrives, and I've watched it 3 times with different sets of people, and I love it. And the fact that they pissed me off with messing around with getting that hoodie, which you're flaunting there, that I was denied twice, and now you have to wait for Hasbro to get it back in stock again in the right size, and it's still not possible, even now, in January 2024. That says all you need to know about Barbie. Wonderful, silly waste of time. That's one of the best experiences of the year.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the film as a story. Basically, I thought the story to it was fantastic. I thought the message behind it was really good. I know that of people who criticise it for being a bit too feminism 101, like it's very basic. But it is Barbie. Like, you're not going to be talking about playing Korea and all those things if you're trying to introduce that message to, a new group. So I feel like some of the criticism that Barbie has sort of suffered, it might just be film Twitter being arsey, because let's be honest, that's generally what film Twitter's like. But yeah, I thought it was an outstanding film. They really leaned into to play around with what we know about Barbie. Like, as a character, to us at least, I think it just looks like it's just literally a lump of moulding clay, plastic, whatever. But it probably does mean a lot more to women, and I think it probably does have a lot more depth to the wider society when you think about how, even right at the very start of the film, it talks about how previously little girls' toys would just be a baby. Which in retrospect, that's weird as fuck. That's what you give to a baby to play with, is a baby. That seems really odd. So to give them something else, and the whole story of how that evolves, I thought was really well handled. So I loved Barbie. I thought it was a tremendous movie. I'm going to move on to my next point now, because my number 3 is actually Barbenheimer. So it's a very specific point I've got here. that includes both of those films. We'll talk about Oppenheimer separately. We'll get to that. But Barbenheimer was probably my favourite experience in the cinema in the past 12 months.
Mm. Yeah.
The whole way that some random weirdo just decided to put the two names together on Twitter, then all of a sudden, this whole new concept was completely born. That people needed to Barbenheimer. It wasn't enough to see Barbie and Oppenheimer in one day and then the next. You had to do both in one day. And I feel like Margot Robbie arguably has had the best 2023 of anybody. So she's got like 1.4 billion for Barbie. Not her solely, like there's obviously a big cast behind it, but she's responsible in part for 1.46 million. And then Oppenheimer got nearly $1 billion as well. Probably from a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have gone to see Oppenheimer, but they wanted to Barbenheimer. And I think that is a fascinating thing that I don't know how the studios are going to take that information in and try and exploit us over the next decade. They've given us two disparate films that, you know, they want to try and make even more money out of. But I just think Barbenheimer, as the experience for me last year, was fantastic. And I'm so glad I listened to you, Stu, and did it the way I did with Barbie first and then Oppenheimer. So I think it would probably have lessened it the other way around personally. I think it worked perfect for me that way. So Barbenheimer is my number 3. Matt, your number 3, please.
So this, it sounds like I'm just a shill for Netflix here, but it just became, it's because it was on Netflix. It's not because of any particular affiliation to it. But this is The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Have you seen it, Stu?
No, I've never even heard about it.
So it's a short film, 39 minutes long, right? The only reason I knew about it is because it is linked to Roald Dahl, the Jew-hating author. And he, I've always liked Roald Dahl. I've always loved the books. It was always a real part of my childhood, everything else. And I'd just seen that this was a story about it, and then I saw the cast, and it's Wes Anderson, and I saw that like Benedict Cumberbatch in it, Ben Kingsley's in it, Richard Ayoade's in it, Ralph Fiennes in it, and it's just, I thought, oh, there's going to be something about this. I don't know what to expect. It's going to be quirky. It's Roald Dahl. And then began this bizarre play within a film story where everybody's looking directly at the camera and breaking the fourth wall the entire way through and telling this story about Henry Sugar, a philanthropist and who tries to cheat at gambling, basically. And I can't say anything more about it than that. It is just the most strange visual experience that isn't like CGI. It's Broadway meets a shitty school production. It's the most bizarre thing, but it's so fun. It's unusual. Now, we were talking before, I don't know when you'll put your edit point in this podcast when you edit it, Andy, but we were talking about Gilmore Girls, and we were talking about how the cadence in Gilmore Girls is awful. And like, it's trying to be dead snappy, and it's trying to be like dead clever and witty. The pace in this is, you could almost be forgiven for watching it at 0.8 because the pace is dead quick, but the story is phenomenal. Like, it's just a really interesting watch, and it'll take you 40 minutes of your life, and you'll come out the other side of it thinking, what have I just seen? That was really unusual and original. I urge everybody to watch it. It's a really fun story.
Literally the only reason I haven't given this a chance is because I think when it was released was shortly after I watched Asteroid City, which is another Wes Anderson film, and I didn't love Asteroid City. So I just felt like I don't want to see any of his work just at the moment. That was the only reason I never gave it a chance. And with it being Netflix, like, it falls to the bottom of the list and you never see it again, like 2 months down the line. Mm-hmm. But that does sound fascinating and really like the kind of thing that I would be interested in. So I'm going to be adding that one to the list.
Apparently, it's already on my list. I don't even remember doing that. But I think looking at the picture though, it looks very Imitation Game. So maybe I thought that it was that, by mistake.
I wouldn't quite say it's peak Andre Gillard, but it's definitely when he went on his gap year to find himself.
Super. Stu, what's your number 3?
I mean, I was a lesbian once. I can't believe that this film is even been watched by 10 people, let alone the now entire country by the looks of things, and it is obviously Saltburn. I had no intention of watching this, and I remember seeing the trailer for it and then coming out of the cinema and texting you saying, I've seen the most Andre Gillard film. That's probably 10 times that name's come up now. This thing looks peak Andy. It looks weird. That bloke from that shit Banshees films in it. It's got all the tick boxes known to man here, and thought nothing of it. Left it alone. Didn't go to see it when it came out. And then it was just there, and then it was being featured on Prime. I thought, okay, well, if it's there, why not? Not that there's other ways and means, obviously, but and I couldn't believe my eyes. And I kept as quiet as I possibly could do. But as soon as Sophia Ellis-Bextor started being everywhere, I don't know if this was a post-Christmas thing that people had got together over the holidays, and like Price did, when watched it with his family. And that's how that this has happened months after it was released. I don't know. So I thought, I'll watch it. Thought nothing of it. You hadn't mentioned anything about it. I thought, well, it's just one of them. I enjoyed it, but I don't know if that's just me. But I thought it was fucking amazing. I thought it was brilliant. I don't know if it's supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be as comical as it really is. And there's some of the things in there that you don't really want to say, but everyone knows about. Like the vampire and the bath and the grave, and I was open-mouthed for at least 20 minutes of that film, and not in a bad way. And obviously it is not enjoyable in some of them moments, but I was stunned. And it takes a lot in 2023, as it was, for that to happen anymore. And for that reason alone, it deserves to be in the top 3. I loved it.
Matt, have you seen it yet? Did you give it a chance? Because I know you mentioned it in the group chat the other day.
No, I haven't yet. And I said to Sam the other day, we've got a film we need to watch. And then we bought a zoo. It sounds like I may or may not have made the right decision, depending on how my good lady's feeling in a delicate stage at present. So yeah, I will see it. I will watch it. But like for all the the discourse about it that I've read is that it's like, from the trailers, I thought it was going to be this dead arty piece, but actually,
exactly.
It's more like Knives Out ridiculous than it is anything else.
It's bubblegum pop almost. Like, yeah, it's not. It looks arty, like it does, because there's lots of stained glass windows and all that kind of almost gothic architecture looking stuff in it.
And it's in 4:3.
Yeah, and it's in 4:3. But it is bubblegum pop. If it's anything, it is Sophie Ellis-Bextor's Murder on the Dance Floor. That's the vibe of the film, to be perfectly honest. So I think there's very much two kinds of people who seem to have approached this film. There are those who see it as a comedy and those who see it as a takedown of the British establishment. And I don't think it's that second one. I think it's a comedy.
Not at all.
I think it's a satire about class within the UK, because obviously it plays a big part in it. But he's not going to do stuff that he does with it not being a comedy. I don't want to spoil things, but there's no way it's not a comedy because it's ridiculous. It's stomach churning in parts, but it's very funny. It was an honourable mention for me. It didn't quite make it. It's like I said to you, people either seem to love it or hate it, and that's been the response. And I'm on the side of love, but it's not the best film of the year for me. It was good. And I think I preferred it to Promising Young Woman, but that probably needs a rewatch. But yeah, I think Saltburn is a better film than Promising Young Woman, both from Emerald for now. So that's where I am with it. So my number 2, generally speaking, when I've come to do these lists in previous years, I've limited myself to only picking films that I saw specifically in 2023, even though the rules are that it just has to be released in 2023. But I couldn't not put Godzilla -1 on my list. I went to see it, I think it was last week in the real world. So like first week in January, I went to see this film. Our good friend Ash Dolan had told me it was a good film. I think it's his number 1 favourite film of the year. And I didn't expect to get from that film what I got from it. I thought it would be a kaiju film, and I know that it's partly set in Japan. That was literally all I knew about it. So I thought it'll be big, it'll be silly. If nothing else, it'll be fun. This was more of a throwback to the original kaiju films, the original Godzilla, which is actually an exploration of Japan's place in the world post-war and how the atomic bomb really changed the world, specifically for Japan, but obviously on a wider scale as well. I didn't realise that the whole film, other than maybe one line, is spoken in Japanese. Like the whole thing is a complete foreign language film. Can't believe it was made for $15 million, because when you look at other movies that we've seen over the year, and we'll probably be discussing on next week's podcast, this looked fucking stunning. It was incredible. It must have been done on the same stage. It must have been quite small and kept it fairly contained. But what they managed to give you with that was incredible. And also just the general story, where I have to be honest, I didn't expect to cry at least twice during a film about Godzilla. But some stuff that happened was so beautiful, so heartbreaking, and also so uplifting at the end that I was just completely blown away by it. Literally at the end of the film, I sat there for 5 minutes once the lights and everything had come up, just to sort of gather my thoughts on this movie, because it was stunning. I was so apprehensive about seeing it because I thought it was part of the American Hollywood Godzilla Kong universe. Monarch, is it the thing that's going on? I thought it was going to be that, and I thought, I'm not going to know what's going on. But it's absolutely nothing to do with that. This is pretty much a sequel to the very first 1950, whatever it was, Godzilla movie. I think everybody should see this film. I think everybody could take something out of it because it was just incredible.
That's what I was going to say to you. Is it part of the Monarch things? Because I've watched all of them and love them all, but I haven't seen them for a while, and it was going to be one of them where I was going to watch him first, even though it's obviously. But that answers the question nicely, because is the Monarch series started yet? I know it's soon.
It's finished.
How is it?
Apparently.
Oh,
10 episodes are out now, so yeah.
Oh, that's tomorrow sorted. Yeah, this one is, I just haven't seen it, so that's why it's not on my list. But after what Ash said and what you just said, it sounds amazing.
There's one part in it where someone seems to hide from a atomic style blast, where they just hide around the corner, that kind of threw me off a little bit, but the rest of the film is so damn near perfect that you just let that slide. It was incredible.
Maybe they were just following duck and cover. You never know.
Yeah, maybe that's all it was. Matty, you a fan of the kaiju world?
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, like, talking about those side-scrolling, like, one of the earliest memories of playing any kind of game was playing Rampage. And that kind of got me into that kind of Godzilla, Mothra, huge, big monster battling. And I'm not talking about the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
That feels good, though.
It's not terrible.
It's not good, but it's fun.
You know, getting a £50 escort feels good at the time, but I'm gonna watch this now. I probably won't watch it tonight, but I'll watch it this week. Giving me vibes. I can't remember what the hell the name of the film is. The Korean like monster film that I'd seen. I've got the cover in my head. It'll come to me. I'll say it on another episode. But yeah, I do like that world, and you know, the American ones they've been out recently. The whole Kong thing, which I like, is like a guilty pleasure and everything else. But I think tying it into a kind of geopolitical side of it, especially after Oppenheimer, seems like just relevant as well and topical. Even though it's about this huge fuck off, big lizard. So yeah, it sounds really good. I'm looking forward to watching it.
It actually feels like it would be the perfect double bill, Oppenheimer and then Godzilla -1, because they are tangentially linked. But yeah, I think that would work perfectly.
It'd be a very serious day.
It certainly would. Certainly would. Right, so Matt, your number 2, please.
So in 2023 was very much, I mean, we never finished it in the end. We kind of got waylaid once we got past Jedi, but we started watching, me and Sam started watching Star Wars in its entirety, chronologically. And the irony being, well, it's not really ironic, but I've just craved Rogue One ever since Rogue One came out. I just wanted Rogue One again since it came out. And then we got the creator. It's not been like reviewed fantastically. There is nothing like original about the creator. The story is pretty like, as it's going along, you know exactly what's going to happen. Like nothing, but it just filled a void at the time where I needed a sci-fi kit of something that felt like Star Wars that wasn't Star Wars. The best thing about Rogue One and Andor was it was in that universe without it being lightsabers and the Force and everything else. And I just needed that fix. And then the creator came along and I really enjoyed it. I went into it doing a stew, not knowing anything about it. I came out of the cinema thinking, fuck, I really enjoyed that. That was like a blast, a sci-fi blast that I just needed to give me that fix. And I really enjoyed it. Like I may not watch it again for 5 years or whatever, but I had a good time with it. And, you know, at a point in my life where I just feel like I'm so busy or like 24/7, I really felt like taking that 3 hours to go to cinema and do everything else was really worth it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was a fantastic film. I think I saw it on a secret screening and I went in hoping it was going to be the creator because I'd avoid, look, as she said, just like I did the same. I knew that John David Washington was in it and that was all I needed to know, so I avoided everything about it. And you are right, it does have that Rogue One. It has that original Star Wars feel to it because nothing feels shiny and new. This felt like a world that they'd built or had been built, and we are, 50, 60 years after the revolution of the robots or whatever. It felt a bit grubby, and I loved it for that. At no point did I feel like this wasn't a real world. Obviously not our world, but it felt realistic. And I think that Gareth Davis? Edwards, sorry. Gareth Edwards. I think he's got a real eye for that kind of East meets West look as well. So yeah, I'm with you. I really, really enjoyed The Creator. It's a tremendous movie.
Yeah, 3 for 3. It looks way better than it's got any right being. The whole, obviously we used to seeing it, and the whole hole in the head thing it's still so creepy, especially seeing it on a child. Spoilers for the plot of the entire film. But yeah, it was. I was shocked when I came out and I was reading about it on the way home. How badly it reviewed, because people didn't seem to like it very much, which really confused me. Because I thought, oh, is this me just enjoying everything again? But there's not one bad performance in there, and you got a child star who's actually really good. So I don't know why people hated on it as much as they did, because it's not. I've not heard it mentioned once since I went to see it, and so we talked about it at the time.
It was very interesting, the reviews of it. I think some of the critics who I heard and read who were like negative towards it seemed to have issues with the Asianness of the film and how it was portrayed, almost like they were accusing it of racism. But maybe it's just because I'm not an Asian person that I didn't see, and maybe it's horrendous. But I never got that vibe through that film. It was nothing but respectful to me. So I'll go this, I don't quite understand what the criticism has been. But yeah. Right. So Stu, your number 2 is actually going to be my number 1. So if you don't mind, we'll skip that and come to it in a second. But you can start us off with the honourable mentions, please.
Oh, let's get it out again then. we mentioned TMNT already. Super Mario Brothers movie again, very much like what the kind of theme so far with Barbie, with we just talked about the creator as well. Absolutely no right being as good as it was, none at all. It was, compared to the 90s one, which is a bit of a joke. It's Mario and Minions, which are incredibly annoying. I think I fear the worst, and we'd seen that trailer with the squeak chair. We've seen that trailer loads and over again with Big Bowser, but to go in there and to watch it and the songs and just everything, it was just really happy. A really happy time of watching a fun film that wasn't just a nostalgia carousel. It was for everyone. It was for everyone and everyone else. It was really, really enjoyable, but this wasn't enough. And thinking back on it, it probably was more nostalgia than how good the film was. And 7 or 8 is probably about fair. Similarly, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which, while being great, wasn't as good as my top 2, and neither was John Wick 4, unfortunately. But saying that, it was a lot harder doing this year than it has been for the last few years. And there's, like, the creator wasn't on mine. There's been others that we completely forget about. And The Last of Us, which was superb and deservedly, it won the was it the creators Emmys that it's won the shitloads from, not the main ones.
Yeah,
and deservedly so, because that episode 3 of that, which was not in the game, really, the gay love story in the apocalypse, perfection, absolute TV perfection of last year, but there was too much for a series of bloaters. There was too much bloat in the middle for me to give it a 10.
Yeah. Matt, honourable mentions, mate.
So I had Super Mario down as well. Had a lot of fun with it when I went to the cinema to see it. Took Sam; she loved it as well. To be fair, someone got me down a wormhole of them saying that Mario's surname is Mario, so he's Mario.
Yeah,
Mario.
Yeah,
And I was like, what? This is insane, and it's changed my life now, because I feel like I've been fed a lie the entire time, because of course it's the Mario Brothers. I didn't even realise Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was 23, to be fair. It felt like it was earlier than that. I did really enjoy it, the whole Rocket Raccoon story and everything else. Not ashamed to say I shed a tear when I was watching that. It's been a decent year, hasn't it, for when we record when we do our worst 5, it was a really tough pick this time around. There wasn't a lot that really disgusted me, but there wasn't a huge amount that I think majorly excelled either. It was just a good year all round. But there's some things now that I'm really looking forward to seeing when I get a bit of downtime, like Saltburn and the Godzilla. It turns out that the Korean film I was referring to was The Host.
Oh yeah, yes,
yeah.
It's from 2006. But yeah, the Mario Brothers movie, it was just tremendous, wasn't it? It was so colourful, so fun, and everything that you wanted from that world. It didn't pretend to be anything else. It didn't try and be too serious. It didn't have those overtones that I think that kind of kids' films that want to appeal to adults have leaned towards a little bit of recent memory, of being a little bit more heart and story than colour. But this was exactly what you wanted from it. It was great.
Yeah, it was as close to playing the original SNES games as you could get on the big screen, I think. I think personally that detracted from it a little bit because there wasn't a lot of storyline. There was probably about 60% storyline and 40%. Look at this shit, isn't it colourful? And that was fun, and that was great in the cinema. But it didn't have a lot of depth to it. But it's a Super Mario Brothers film. I don't expect it to have a lot of depth either. So, but yeah, it was an enjoyable film.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's no Wreck-It Ralph. That's fine. We can't have perfection every time.
Yeah.
Because Wreck-It Ralph does have that mix between the colour and the story, and when the Metal Gear alarm goes off, makes you laugh, even though kids won't have a clue what that is, and stuff like that. So yeah.
One film that I think you may have forgotten was released in 2023, Matt, was Air, which is an honorable mention.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. You know, I'll tell you why I forgot that, because I even started this list in January, and a bloody reset on my phone wiped all my keep notes on this pathetic Pixel 6. So I think, yeah, that again, that should have been on my list because I really enjoyed it. I completely forgot that even existed.
I think I said at the time it felt like it was the first 5-star film of the year, personally.
Well, in preparation for this, I must have put it on the Cage Fighting Twitter account because I went through every single tweet that I tweeted in 23 to find reviews of things that I said. So I must have put it on the Cage Fighting one. I didn't go through those because I'd been there all day. So yeah, shame. Completely forgot about that. Worth a watch again soon, actually.
They somehow managed to turn he signed a contract to sell shoes into a really interesting storyline that pulled you along. I mean, I love Affleck anyway. I'm a big fan of his work as an actor and our director, and obviously it gives us both in this one. It's always good to see Affleck and Damon on screen together, so I really enjoyed Air.
While you're on Air, there's like Tetris as well. Tetris was fun. And so was
a few of them this year.
Blackberry. That was another one.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was one in 2022, which I'd mentioned to you the other day, the pinball one, which is also very similar. And that was brilliant as well. Like, there's a whole slew of these films that probably should be shit, but ended up being really good fun. Eileen, I loved. I thought it was a tremendous, sexy thriller. It feels like we don't get neo-noirs get on the big screen hardly ever anymore. And I found this very intoxicating. I found it gripping. I want to see more films with Thomasin McKenzie and Anne Hathaway together. I loved their interactions. It just didn't quite make the top 5 for me. And the other thing I wanted to mention, purely because I tend to not put TV shows on my list, I do want to mention The Bear Season 2. I think that was probably the best thing I saw on TV last year. It was just outstanding. Like, the first season was a really excellent story that goes at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you just find out all these things and you have to try and keep up with them. The second season is the season that obviously they got renewed and knew they had a bit more breathing space so they could flesh out the characters, give them a bit more time. So anyone who isn't just Jeremy Allen White, we can find out what motivates them, what drives them forward. It was just inspirational television in parts. Ayo Edebiri, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce the surname. I think between her, Margot Robbie and Sandra Huller had the best 2023, because she was also in the Turtles film and Bottoms as well, which was a really good, funny comedy. So Ayo, like, hats off to you. I thought you were fucking outstanding last year.
I was just checking. Episode 6, the Christmas one, is on a 9.6 on IMDb.
Yeah, as close to perfection as you'll see on anything. It is sublime.
And you could probably watch that episode with no knowledge of anything at all.
In theory, it's set before the events of everything, so you probably could, but in context, it means everything, and then it obviously comes back in right at the very end of episode 10. I think it's the last one of season 2. So it's worth, I fully recommend that to anybody. It's just brilliant, brilliant TV. So we'll move on to number 1 now. And my number 1, I mean, this is going to be absolutely no surprise to anybody, because I think I've mentioned it every single fucking week that we've done a podcast. It's Past Lives. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's going to win the Oscar. That's going to go to another film. But I do think this was my favourite film. I absolutely just fell in love with everybody in this movie. It's a movie about... It's not even about, like, missed opportunities in the sense of not being with the one you should be, because I don't think it's that. It's just about things that happen in your past and the lives you could have led had you followed that road. I've said it a million times, like, just the use of silence in this film is so... I mean, I've already said intoxicating about Eileen, but again, it is intoxicating. You get drunk on watching these two people standing next to each other, but realizing that their lives are so far apart that it's never going to be what one or the other wants it to be anymore. Life has changed. I think that's what the title really is about. Past lives is that, you've had your lives may have intertwined in the past, but that's no longer where you are. And you just have to roll with what you've got now. I just loved it. I really, really hope that we might get some Oscar love for this film, because I do think it deserves it. It's just a tremendous film. And as I said, I've mentioned this film every week on this podcast, so there's no point in me really talking too much about it because I've already said quite a lot. Stu, it was your number 2, so obviously you loved it as well.
Yeah, if you just listen to the last 2 minutes of him talking all wanky film about this, it's all true, but it doesn't matter. It's just a really excellent piece of work from start to finish, and it's something I would never normally watch at all. I don't know what drew me to this one, why I gave it a chance, because in a normal world, like Roy Lane, that's been, I mentioned earlier, I've screen grabbed it now. Well, I'll get to it maybe. But it was the same with this. For some reason, I had a feeling about it and I wanted to watch it. And it's all, if it wasn't for my number 1, this would be, it's probably a 10 as well. I'm having number 1 and 2 as 2 10s for me. It's a perfect film. My number 1 is only my number 1 because it's my kind of thing more. Because it's an exceptional piece of work that everyone should see. It doesn't matter that it's 90% in Korean. It doesn't matter. So is Parasite. Who cares? And Godzilla, like you just said. So effectively 2 foreign language films on your list. But yeah, you can't even say you can spoil it because you really can't. It's just a vibe for 2 hours.
Yeah, like not a lot happens in it really, does it? It's just 2 people trying to reconnecting after years apart. That's literally the storyline.
Yeah. Which sounds shit, but it's really not.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it's been a really good year for foreign language films. Also, Anatomy of a Fall was another excellent film that I probably should have put at least in my honorable mentions. Really good film that was a third in German, a third in French, and a third in English. Brilliant. And we've got Zone of Interest coming out soon, so it feels like foreign language cinema is getting a bit more of eyes on it, which is great to see. So, number 1, you 2 gentlemen have both got the same number 1 film. So, Matt, would you like to announce your number 1, please?
Well, I didn't think that Cillian Murphy's cock would make my number 1. However, this is 2023, maybe. No, Oppenheimer was our number 1, and it was my number 1 because every so often you need something in your life that's going to make you entirely miserable, and you need something that's going to challenge you and not be a comfortable watch. And that was Oppenheimer. Like, it was intense. It was a struggle to watch, not in a bad way, but it was very intense, and I really enjoyed that element of it. Again, it wasn't Chernobyl, the excellent TV show, but I've also had a craving for that since I watched it, and I felt a little bit of that similar world-ish. And I just really enjoyed the experience of Oppenheimer. From the audio sense of the word, absolutely understand like the whole IMAX or ScreenX or whatever it is that we would have seen it in. Visually, not as sold that it needed that personally. But the experience of it was just unbelievable. I left the cinema feeling like aghast, like literally had to take time to decompress. It was an experience that I haven't had for a long time at the cinema. And because of that, no film made me feel like Oppenheimer made me feel this year, in terms of the feeling of anxiety watching it and the uncomfortableness of it that, was quite cathartic. It was an experience more so than a film. And it was unusual because of that. And that's why I enjoyed it so much. Like, I won't see it again for a decade. Do you know what I mean? The same way that I only saw Inception once. and I saw it again for like a 10-year thing in the IMAX. It was like those similar vibes. Like it was an experience first before it was a film, and for that reason, it's my number one.
Stu?
Yeah, just yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, when with Barbenheimer, we're watching that in the morning and then going back and being all joyful, and then going in to watch this for it's about 3 hours or whatever it was, and then coming out and sitting there in total silence, not one person pissing about or any of that kind of business, and it would be totally packed as well on opening night, which I hadn't had for years and years and years, even pre-COVID and all that stuff. Can't remember the last time I went to an opening night of anything, and it deserved it in the end. It made you think. And I mean, we've got over an hour into this. We haven't even mentioned Killers of the Flower Moon, which I loved, but it was too long. And it could have been an hour. It could have been 45 minutes to an hour shorter than it was. Oppenheimer couldn't. Every single second of that film was meticulously planned, excellently executed. The sound was awesome, and everyone could win Oscars for it. Every single person involved. And it wouldn't be a stretch because it was perfect.
Yeah. So when I said that I don't think Past Lives will win it, I think this is going to win the Oscar because it's got everything pretty much into this movie, hasn't it? It is absolutely incredible. The use of sound is phenomenal. The fact that when the bomb drops, you hear nothing. So I suppose you probably wouldn't, because your eardrums would be blown out if you were that close to it. So you wouldn't. It felt. And I love the fact that you don't really get to see anything. You just see Oppenheimer seeing things, because you're watching Oppenheimer because it's about Oppenheimer rather than it being Oppenheimer's experience, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a really interesting way of doing it without sensationalizing things, because I think that is a very easy path they could have gone down. I know the film got criticism for not showing the effects that it had on the Japanese people, but you saw the effects it had on Oppenheimer, and it is about him. Yeah. So I completely understand why they chose the decisions they chose in that film. And it was outstanding. And it's the best things that Robert Downey Jr. has ever done in his career. Like, he's an actor I've always thought he's fine, and I've always enjoyed him in things. But I saw him in that, and I thought, oh, Christ, you're a proper actor. And you've just been doing, popcorn stuff, which, fine, no criticism. But you can do a lot more than what you've been given over the last 20-odd years. It's just stunning. Emily Blunt, I mean, that character's got quite a lot of criticism again, because Trisha doesn't like it when, everything isn't completely equal, and Kitty Oppenheimer should have had as much screen time as Robert Oppenheimer for whatever reason it wants to make up. But she was stunning because she was such a hard-faced bitch in this film. She was just horrible. Stood next to Robert Oppenheimer, the man who created the fucking atomic bomb. And she was sort of played off as the villain in it, and she excelled in that role. She was absolutely incredible. I mean, it's Christopher Nolan, so we were always going to love this film, because it's very rare that we don't enjoy it unless it's Tennant and your name's Matthew Guy. Generally speaking, we do sort of warm towards his films, I find. So it was great. And I think you made a good point there, Stu, about Killers of the Flower Moon, just to go back to that. You could easily have knocked out half an hour of that film for this film. I'm all for directors getting given the time they need to tell their story. But I feel that if you took anything out of this film, you would have made it a worse film. Whereas you could have taken half an hour out of Killers of the Flower Moon, and it would have been the same film, just as great as it was. So that's why I think that Oppenheimer probably deserves more credit personally than Killers of the Flower Moon. But Killers of the Flower Moon does have some really good performances in it as well. But I hope Lily Gladstone gets the Oscar, or at least gets the Oscar nod. She deserves it. She was, a powerhouse in a film with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, for crying out loud. That's tall orders to stand up against, and she was incredible. So, yeah.
And she retired, and she'd given up acting before he got her back.
Yeah. I'd never heard of her, then looked at her filmography, and there was a lot of throwaway nonsense. So why Marty Scorsese saw her and thought she needs to be the one? I don't know, but I'm so glad that he did, because She was phenomenal. Right then, so that is the best of 2023 this week. Next week, we'll be looking at the bottom 5, the disappointment 5. I'm not quite sure what we should call it because it's the films we didn't really like, let's be honest.
Or hated.
It's in some of them, it will certainly be what we hated about 2023. But yeah, that'll be next week anyway, so make sure you join us then. We are going to be moving the podcast to a Tuesday. We tend to record on a Sunday. It just gives me a little bit more time to edit it and put it up for you guys. And plus, I've noticed I get a lot of podcasts out on a Monday, so it might just be a bit of a quieter day for you, and we'll give you something that you can listen to. So for this week, Matthew, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, everybody. Look after yourselves. Thank you very much for joining us in 23 and joining us in 24. And we're very happy to have you along for the ride.
Stuart, would you like to say goodbye?
I am not a vampire. Goodbye.
And this is goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.